Welcome into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 6. This is part number 2, guys. It's actually the first one we're going live with, but it is part number 2. 331-332, the rotation number. That is Boston College, Army, all the way down to Kent State, Ohio, 355-356. And we're breaking it down with a guy that knows a lot about the group of 5 and a lot about these matchups in and around the Virginia area. Richmond, ESPN there. At Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, Matt Josephs. Matt, welcome in. How you feeling, buddy?
Feeling good, Drew. I noticed that we both have the respective matchup in the NL wildcard represented in this one, but some people who may watch this on Thursday or Friday, one team may move on, the other one may not.
Yeah, man, it looks like the team that's down 0-1 is primed to win the last 2 of the series and move on. So as we're talking the Marlins and the Phillies matchup, we got Mid-Major Matt from Philadelphia, right? Rocking the Phillies gear.
Yep, from outside of Philly. Great atmosphere last night. Yeah. I don't think the Marlins are dead yet, but should be a fun one tonight. And if there is one Thursday.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's cool to see what the MLB playoff atmosphere was like. And you're right. That Philly atmosphere was great. But let's get into the games here. 12 noon Eastern, 331-332, Boston College and Army kicking us off. We're seeing the Black Knights minus 3-point home favorites, 50 being the total. Interesting matchup to kick us off here, Matt. BC and Army.
Yeah, and the first thing you want to watch, and I feel like we did this, 2 weeks ago, is the weather once again. We've got a tropical storm, I think is what they're calling now. That's going to be heading up to that part of the country Saturday and Sunday. And with this one, there's going to be some rain. There's going to be some wind. It's going to be generally ugly conditions. And in that sort of situation, I favor the home team here. I mean, you look at Army. I mean, Army, they practice in rain and wind. They do all their stuff. Like, if there's any sort of adversity whatsoever on the football field, the academies are the ones that I feel like will never be fazed by that sort of thing. Army's coming off the bye week, so they've had 2 weeks to kind of figure some things out. And I think Army's getting a little bit better. I think they're starting to figure out their offense a little bit more. The defense is starting to play like we kind of expected it to play last year. And they're going to get Tyrell Robinson back, it looks like. Now, obviously, look, the Army is very tough to get any sort of injury report from, but looking up this game, there was an article that said Tyrell Robinson, one of their better running backs, could be available for this one. Boston College has been different since Thomas Castellanos took over at quarterback, the UCF transfer. I know they're coming off a win against UVA. That's at home. UVA is pathetic. I kind of like Army here, especially if it's rainy and windy, because you know that's not going to phase them.
Next game up, 334, 7:30 Eastern. We get the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at Louisville. Another top 25 matchup here for the Irish. We knew they were going to have a tough schedule. I didn't realize it'd be like back to back here. -6, -6.5. That's the Irish as the road favorite. 54 being the total. A big one here in the, I want to say ACC, but I guess Notre Dame just friends with benefits. Not really sure, but throw it over to you in Louisville, Kentucky here, Matt.
So I write this article now for the website I write for, ftnbets.com. It's a spots article, and this was one of the spots I kind of highlighted here because if you look at what Notre Dame's done the last 2 weeks, they play at home against Ohio State. They lose a heartbreaker in the last second. Last week they drive down the length of the field almost, and they go and get that touchdown against Duke with about 30 seconds left to get the victory. Next week, they've got USC in a massive home game because, these little wins against these other teams like Duke and everything, that's good, all well and good. But the game against USC is going to be a huge one next week at home. I'm sure they're already growing the grass out to slow down USC's speed a little bit like they did all those years playing Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. And then there's this game kind of in the middle. And you look at Louisville, and I think this game's going to tell us a lot about Louisville because you look at this team and they're 5-0, but can you argue that any of their wins were all that spectacular? They beat Indiana. They won last week against NC State. It was an ugly game. So I think this game's going to tell us a lot about what we think about Louisville here. But I think there's a chance they're a little live because I think the Fighting Irish, as you just mentioned, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. They've got a huge one next week. I know, look, they can't lose because their national title hopes are gone because then they'd have 2 losses. But maybe we don't get their best effort here. So maybe Louisville's a little live at home in this one.
Yeah, it's always a difficult handicap to see if a team can keep it going each and every week. Every now and again they can, but it seems like in college football, when you do that, 3-4 weeks in a row, one of them gets you against these good teams, especially going on the road and having to cover by margin, almost a touchdown here. So it's tough work for the Irish, but this is a pretty good Notre Dame team. That will be a fun one to watch Saturday night, guys. We get Wake Forest and Clemson up next. This is a full-blown ACC matchup. 3:30 Eastern, 51.5 at most shops right now, Matt, being the total. -3 touchdowns. That's Clemson at home. I don't know. That's a lot. Demon Deacons +3 touchdowns. That's what I have circled. What are you liking in Clemson, South Carolina?
Well, it certainly won't be like last year's game. 51-45, Clemson won that game last year. Of course, Sam Hartman was under center. There's a couple of things that are interesting here. Obviously, Wake Forest coming off the bye week. Wake Forest has not been very good this year. You go over a lot of their games, close victories, ugly losses, things like that. I mean, it's a team that's just not reached their potential. And I think a lot of us kind of assumed, and that was kind of the word we had back in the ACC Media Day when I was there, that Dave Clawson was going to figure things out. Mitch Griffiths was going to take over this offense. He's got a lot of good wide receivers, and things were just going to click for Wake Forest. And so far, they haven't. Now, on the one hand, you say, all right, maybe they refocused themselves. They used the bye week to install some wrinkles and things like that. But last week, I feel like Clemson kind of found themselves. My beloved Orange played like they usually do in large games, and they crapped the bed. And so Clemson has some momentum now. You know, this was a Tigers team that you could have kicked while they were down, but now I think they've gotten some momentum. Clemson's got a bye week next week. I think we get a really good effort from Clemson here. I'll be interested to see. And as we've talked about on these things, team totals are a place that I like to look. I'll be interested to see what the number is for Wake Forest. With it being 52.5, there's a chance we might get Wake Forest in 17.5, 16.5, whatever it is. I think Wake Forest goes under that. I think Clemson's woken up a bit. I think the win at Syracuse has helped them out, refocus things, kind of gotten over the loss to Florida State here. That was their last home game, by the way. So I think Clemson plays really well here. I think I'm going to look potentially at a Wake Forest team total under here, around 16.5, 17.5, whenever it decides to come out.
Good breakdown, Matt. We got a good one. Georgia Tech in Miami up next. But do want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the show, Viva Tequila Seltzer. Guys, go check them out, vivatequilaseltzer.com. Just a quick shout out to our friends at Viva Tequila Seltzer, the ultimate go-to for toasting those winning picks. Only 88 calories, 0 carbs, no sugar, 4.5% ABV. Viva, the perfect match for celebrating your cash tickets. Check them out, Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. Proud sponsor of Every Game on the Board. Wherever you're downloading your podcasts at, search Every Game on the Board. We go live on Twitter and YouTube as well. Every Game on the Board on YouTube, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, at Drew Martin Betts as well. Georgia Tech at Miami in South Florida here, Matt. -21, 3 touchdowns. That's the Canes as the home favorite. 57.5 being the total. Always a tricky handicap. Yellow Jackets coming off of that look-ahead loss, biggest loss ATS-wise, I believe, last week. What are you liking in the ACC matchup in Hard Rock?
I mean, there is that school of thought that Georgia Tech was just overlooking Bowling Green last week, but I can't put my money on Georgia Tech. I just can't. In the past, I would sit here and say, well, Miami, large favorite. They kind of sleepwalk through games like that, but they haven't sleptwalk through games like this. The Bethune-Cookman game, they came out, they took care of business. They went to Temple in their first road game of the year, and they took care of business. Now they've had 2 weeks, and Cam Kinchins is back, and he's healthy for this one. I think that's going to help. Miami does have a road trip to North Carolina next week, so maybe one eye is towards them. But, I mean, I think we get a really good Miami effort here, Drew. I think maybe a first quarter play on Miami, a first half play on Miami. I think Georgia Tech's at its lowest right now, and I think the Canes come out, start fast. And I'd like to think, and you would know better than I do, I'd like to think there will be a good crowd for this one. Of course, it's not one of the high-profile games, so probably won't be. But I think we get a fast start from Miami in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the Miami home crowd is always a little bit tough to handicap, from just like a ticket handicap. But if it's Florida State, if it's like one of the big matchups, if they're ever playing Florida, anything like that, if Clemson, those type of teams, Notre Dame come to Hard Rock Stadium, then it's a tough ticket. That thing's packed out, particularly like if it's a night game or a singled out game. The day games against teams that aren't that big are the ones where there's like nobody there. But Saturday night, yeah, this could be a big one. At least, most of the way full, and a raucous crowd might be there, as we got Virginia Tech and Florida State up next. Speaking of the Seminoles, laying 24.5 or 25, depending where we're shopping. This is a 3:30 game here, Matt. 53 being the total. Hokies visiting Tallahassee and taking on the Seminoles.
Virginia Tech looked really good last week at home against Pittsburgh. Now I know part of that was this Pittsburgh team has been a massive disaster and has been worse than we could have expected. And look, it's a road game in Tallahassee against a Florida State team coming off a bye week. But I think Virginia Tech found a little bit of a formula with Kyron Drones. They got it to their weapons. Tootin was really good at running back, and they found a way to kind of get some space out there. Now Florida State's defense is really good, so that's a bit of a concern here. But I kind of like the over here. You're getting a Florida State team that should be focused. They got Syracuse next week at home. Virginia Tech, I think they're going to do a little bit of the heavy lifting for this total, Drew, but I think Florida State can do a lot of the heavy lifting in this one. I could see like a 45-20 type game, 45-17 type game here. So I kind of like the over here. I think we'll see a lot of points in this one.
All right, Matt. Next game up, we got 3-4-1, 3-4-2, making our way down in rotation order, 6 o'clock Eastern in Boca Raton, Florida. The FAU Owls, -3.5 right now, midweek, 55.5 being the total. It's Tulsa, the Hurricanes, uniquely enough, visiting South Florida, taking on the Owls. Tightly contested game. At least that's what the markets are telling us. Do you like anything here in Boca Raton?
Tom Herman with a bye week to kind of figure some things out. Obviously, they lost Casey Thompson, so the quarterback is now Daniel Richardson, the CMU transfer, and I've liked him. He's very raw, or at least he was with the Chippewas, and he's got some talent, though. I think that Tom Herman can do some good things with them, and you've got a Tulsa team that looked really good against Temple. I don't think that's going to show us very much. Of course, they do have the extra couple days to prepare for this one because that game was on Thursday. I don't believe in Tulsa. It's a road game here. I like Florida Atlantic. Tom Herman with some extra time to put some wrinkles into this offense. I liked Florida Atlantic. I was high on Florida Atlantic before the season began. I know they've had a really slow start. Obviously, the injuries have been a little bit of a factor here, but with some time to prepare, I'll take the home team in this one.
Matt, I got a heck of a stat on Daniel Richardson, the CMU quarterback. First off, he was pretty good in the MAC. I was surprised to just even see him on the roster for FAU. I kind of forgot about that. He's Dade County, where Miami and Florida is, Dade County's all-time leading passer. Did you know that?
Did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, in high school. Of course, he went, you'd think, like, why didn't he go to, like, a bigger school in the SEC? Well, he's only, like, 5'9" or 5'10", but he's a good athlete back there, guys. So watch out. I wouldn't just kind of fade FAU because their quarterback went down. Their backup is pretty good in Daniel Richardson. We got North Texas and Navy up next here, Matt, 3:30 Eastern. We're seeing the Mean Green as the underdog on the road. This offense can score. They just can't stop anybody. That's usually a tough ask when you're facing an option team in Navy. Laying 6 here. That's Navy as the home favorite. 61.5 the total, Matt.
Yeah, that number may not be high enough. North Texas is dead last in running defense. Look, we know what Navy does, and we know that Navy obviously lost last week to South Florida, and a lot of the reason was because the athletes were just better. The Brown quarterback kid, Byram Brown, I think that's what his first name was, Byram. He was awesome, and he played really well for South Florida, and it was because of him that they were able to move the ball up and down in field on Navy. Well, I obviously North Texas is the same way. They've got a decent quarterback. They've got a pretty solid offense here, so I expect a shootout. The problem is, for the North Texas side, I don't think they're going to stop them. So do they give up large chunks of yardage to Navy, or do we see the old Navy where it's like 17 plays, 75 yards, 7 minutes off the clock here? But I see a lot of points here, Drew. You can't be dead last in rushing defense and go up against Navy and expect to win the game. But I think North Texas can score some points too. They are also a run-based team for the most part. It's not that they won't pass it. 2 run-based teams. Obviously, the one worry is with the new clock rules, the clock will not stop every first down. That might be a difference here, but I can't see either team stopping each other. I think the lean here is the over.
I don't disagree with you. But Matt, one thing I always kind of pump the brakes on is pretty much the military academies running the option. If you'll notice, they run so much clock off the play clock that you kind of even mentioned it. If they move the ball, but they move the ball slowly and run off, half the quarter each time they get the ball, that's like terrible for overs. But I'm with you. I don't want to bet the under by any means, but you factor that in too, right?
So it's pretty funny because they actually are somewhat faster than they used to be, or at least perceived
Okay.
wise. Because remember, they've got no. So here's the irony, though, Drew. I'm looking it up right now. Navy is 130th in seconds per play in FBS games, 31 seconds. Army's 31.4. So you're right, but it just seems like they're not the team that they usually have been. They're passing the ball a little bit more. And once again, if you're breaking off large chunks of yards, like I think that you're going to be able to see a lot of points here. By the way, North Texas in FBS games is 18th in seconds per play. So you've got one really fast team, you've got one really slow team here. I think Navy's going to have some 60-yard touchdown runs. I think that's why we're going to get the over here.
Yeah, because even if they rack up rushing yards, if it's all like 5 yards a chop, that it's going to be iffy to get to 60. But you're right. If they're breaking off 40 and 50-yard runs, the over should be the play, guys. As we'll move down here, UTSA and Temple up next, 2:00 Eastern, 345, 346, running down in rotation order here. Roadrunners minus 14-point road favorites, 54.5 being the total. UTSA at Temple up next, man.
Obviously, watch the stats of Frank Harris. The coach seems to think that he's going to play this week. And we notice the difference in UTSA when Frank Harris is in there or when the Marburger kid is there. And the Marburger kid wasn't even that bad. I mean, he wasn't great, but like when you watch the Army game, he was serviceable. He did what he had to. UTSA, they've been miserable so far this season, but this is the start of conference play. So it's almost funny when you look at the start of conference play, you take what they did in those first 3 or 4 games and you look at it, obviously, but you also look at what you kind of expected them to do all season. And UTSA, I think, was going to win this conference or at least be in the championship game. So this is kind of a refresh here. Temple, one-dimensional. They throw the ball. It's about it. They don't run the ball very well. There's going to be no home field advantage. There may even be nobody at this game because Temple fans don't want to watch this team, and UTSA fans are probably not flying to Philadelphia for this game, so there won't be much of a home field advantage. This one I'm going to be looking at probably like a UTSA team total over, especially if Frank Harris plays, and a Temple team total under here. The number is high enough that I think we'll get something nice for both of them. But I think that UTSA wins this game, kind of refreshes the whole season, and we kind of see the Roadrunners team that we expected all year.
Good breakdowns, Matt, and shout out to the chat box here. We got David Montgomery in the house. He's a listener here of the pod and caught us live on YouTube. Every game on the board on YouTube. Homecoming David, he's referencing he should call himself. Matt, I think I asked you last podcast or the podcast before, but David, we always appreciate the comments. Anybody else, feel free to chime in. I forget. Do you factor in homecoming into your handicap at all?
I do not. Okay. I don't, for the most part. And it's more situationally, more looking at like what's happening between the game before, the game after. We've talked about it. The parents' weekend stuff is more what you would look for sometimes because sometimes the student sections aren't there. That's kind of what happened at Syracuse was for parents' weekend, the kids sat with the parents. They didn't sit in the student section. So I don't really factor that sort of thing in there because most times homecoming is an easier opponent. You want to win in front of your fans, so you're going to schedule an easier opponent.
Homecoming David, thanks for the comments here as we got Maction the next 5 games here, Matt. I believe all the Maction games, we're talking them right now, guys. 347, 348, 330 Eastern, Northern Illinois and Akron. We're seeing Northern Illinois minus 6.5, 43 being the total. Akron, Ohio here, Matt.
2 teams that I can't put money on right now. Northern Illinois just doesn't look the same. Obviously, one of my win totals was Northern Illinois over 5.5 wins, which I still think is going to hit because the MAC portion of their schedule, they're going to get some wins. They're better than Akron. I would worry about it if they can't go to Akron and win. Akron killed them last year, 44-12. So this is a revenge game for Northern Illinois. You look at Akron, they lost last week 13-10 to Buffalo. Their offense is bad. Their defense has been pretty good, but I can't put money on either of these 2 teams. But I'll say this, if Northern Illinois can't beat Akron, then I'll be very concerned about my 5.5. I think Northern Illinois wins, but I'm certainly not laying points with them on the road.
Sure, and I believe Akron's quarterback got banged up as well, and we've seen a move towards the Northern Illinois side from 3.5 up to 6.5, guys. So be careful betting the Zips in that one. We got the Chippewas and the Bulls up next. You brought up Buffalo. They're catching 3 at home, 52 being the total. 2:00 Eastern kick here. CMU at Buffalo.
Yeah, rain and wind once again. And there could be some, I think I saw 20-mile-an-hour gusts for this one. And that kind of takes this thing and evens it up a little bit, although neither team is all that explosive passing the ball. But I think that it's a tough game to handicap here. Obviously, the total's gone down a bunch of points already because of the weather forecast. These are two teams that, Central Michigan struggled last week, but we've talked about it, and we'll have it in our next game. Chris Creighton's a great bet when he's an underdog, and he's a terrible bet, or not a terrible bet, but not a great bet when he's a favorite. So you can't really take that much from what Central Michigan did last week, but I can't put money on either of these two teams, Drew. I think if you want to, you could try and get an under. You're going to get a bad number because it was a lot higher earlier. Just know that there's going to be a lot of wind and a lot of rain in this one, and the forecast is going to be ugly, and these two teams are somewhat ugly.
Matt, next game up, Ball State and Eastern Michigan, 351, 352 going down in rotation order, 330 Eastern, -2 in the hook. That's EMU as the home favorite, 43 being the total. Ball State at Eastern Michigan in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I believe I'm pronouncing that right.
I'm really mad at myself. I didn't take Western Michigan last week. We had them in our segment, and Ball State's just bad, and Western Michigan was playing well, and it was a really short number. Vegas keeps giving respect to Ball State, and I don't understand why. Their offense isn't good. Their best tight end hasn't played yet this season. Their defense has not been very good because their secondary is gone. And Eastern Michigan hasn't been playing great either, and I know I just said that Chris Creighton as a favorite is not a great bet, but this is such a short number here. Eastern Michigan's the better team. If you want to maybe take, there could be some less juicy here. Maybe you don't necessarily want to trust field goal kickers or things like that and just take the money line. But I feel like Eastern Michigan's the better team in this one, and the number's short enough that you could do that.
We got some more comments here. There's a couple guys left. Brandon in the house, the West Virginia Mountaineer fan, and yeah, getting a couple wins there, my man. So Neil Brown doing a good job with his seat warming up there at West Virginia, but they got a couple big games. Thanks for chiming in, Brandon. And Jenna in the house, ATS record for Matt. I do know this, Matt, the last 3 years, you were like the number one handicapper ATS wise, man. So whatever you want to throw out with that. I know your record has been really good over like a multi-year, which I almost think is like more important. But yeah, if you want to throw anything out and how you're doing this season, what you're looking to, like, are you mostly betting season or team totals? Are you doing sides, totals, or just kind of all of it?
Yeah, kind of just all of it. Most of it is team totals. And for those who aren't familiar, Caesars has team totals. DraftKings has had team totals. They haven't had them in Virginia for some reason, store subject. But I just noticed the last 2 weeks, FanDuel started putting up some team totals. So that's good. And the reason for that, for the new people who haven't necessarily watched this every week, is why try and have all 4 units in a football game perform the way you want it to? If you think that in the bowl, we're going to do Bowling Green in Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio's offense is better than Bowling Green's. If you like the over, but you're worried Bowling Green's not going to contribute enough, why not take the Miami of Ohio team total over? And then you don't have to worry about it. You can almost take a break. You can kick your feet up. You can go to the bathroom when Bowling Green is on offense. So I feel like it's all about kind of reducing the amount of variables. And by taking a team total, you're taking one offense against one defense and asking that unit to do whatever you think it's going to do. So it's just one of those things that I think in this sport, baseball, you can somewhat do that as well. Football, obviously the NFL, you can do that. I know people do it in basketball, although that's a little bit harder to kind of handicap because of obviously, there's a lot more points scored, but I really like trying to reduce the amount of variables when I bet a game. And by taking a team total, I'm asking 2 units to do what I want instead of 4.
Matt, we got 2 games left here. Bowling Green and Miami of Ohio, some action. We're seeing the Redhawks -10-point home favorites in Miami, that is of Ohio, 45 being the total. Bowling Green, the Falcons at the Miami of Ohio Redhawks.
Yeah, what's Bowling Green's focus level here after the win at Georgia Tech? What is their focus level? And was that just a blip on the radar, or was this is like all of a sudden the Falcons are now a bet on team? I don't think they are. Miami Ohio's kind of figured themselves out and found themselves. Blaine Gabbert's brother has done such a good job there, and they're coming off the nice win against Kent State. They're playing good defense here. My lean here is to Miami of Ohio. I just wonder if Bowling Green just was so excited about what they did last week, and now they go to sleepy Miami of Ohio, who's very good. Not to mention Bowling Green won this game last year, 17-13. My lean here is to Miami, Ohio. It is a large total here. Or excuse me, it's a double-digit spread here. So my worry here is about them covering. This could come into play where you take Miami, Ohio's team total. I think their offense is going to move the ball pretty nicely here. Or you maybe look at a Bowling Green team total under here because Miami, Ohio's defense is pretty good.
Last game up, guys, and then we will get a best bet from Matt, who smashed his best bet last week with the winner. So we'll get one more from him. But first, Kent State in Ohio. Last action game, last game for the rotation in this section of every game on the board on YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at, and on Twitter at MidMajor Matt. Give him a follow at Drew Martin Bets. Kent State, Ohio here. Probably one of the best teams in the MAC versus the worst team in the MAC, in my opinion. Minus 26, though. That's the Bobcats as the home favorite. Always the ultimate equalizer here, Matt. Can they win by 4 touchdowns? 45.5 being the total.
And the one of the wisdoms of that we learned here in gambling is low total, high spread. You usually look at the underdog. I wouldn't put money on Kent State. I mean, the theory behind that is obviously you're up 26-0 in a game that's going to see 45.5 points. So you in theory have a shot there, but I can't. Kent State's shown me nothing this season. Remember, for those who haven't seen it, Kent State returned 0 starters from last year's offense. And that was an offense that was really good. And their head coach is in Colorado now. So, but the problem is, like, it's a large number, and Ohio's got Northern Illinois next week, and that's obviously not as large of a game because Northern Illinois is not as good, but they could also be looking ahead to next week. They're coming off a bye week. Maybe you look first quarter or first half with Ohio here. They are the better team. Kent State hasn't shown very much, but I am very leery of laying that many points with a team that traditionally doesn't see that many numbers next to their name.
Matt, just a couple quick questions here. Syracuse, North Carolina, UNC minus 8.5, 59 being the total, and NC State minus 6.5, 45 against Marshall. Those two games from the first section. I know you're close with kind of that area and with your radio show there, ESPN Richmond. And do you like anything on tonight's card for the people watching live?
All right, so NC State, I think Marshall's live. Marshall's defense should keep them in it. And NC State's making a quarterback change. MJ Morris is going to take over for Brennan Armstrong, which is very interesting. There's 2 different directions you can go with that. The team loves it. MJ Morris comes in, plays really well, and NC State takes off, which is obviously what I'm hoping happens because I have the NC State win total over. Or they continue to struggle and things continue to be bad for NC State, and Marshall's defense kind of keeps this thing interesting. The reason why I don't love Marshall outright here, their quarterback play is not great. Rasheen Ali is very good. He has done some good things. I think Marshall can cover this. I certainly also, and this is always personal preference with the 6.5s out there, if you can find a cheap way to buy it up to a 7, obviously having multiple ways to take a look at it, you can, or multiple books to do that with. I always feel more comfortable with the even number there. So I try and buy that up to 7. And then Syracuse, North Carolina, Syracuse last year started out the season 6-0 and then lost the next 6 games. And it's when the schedule started getting tougher. North Carolina, with Drake May, Drake May's due to have his Heisman moment. Syracuse's secondary has been all right so far this season, but I wonder, leaving the Carrier Dome, the GMA Wireless Dome, and then going to North Carolina and playing this game, and Drake May haven't not have his Heisman moment yet. I wonder if this is a North Carolina get-right situation. The total's a little high. Syracuse's offense has had some injuries. It's a little bit of a worry there. And North Carolina's defense hasn't been great. They've had a lot of sacks, it seems like. But I can't, Drew, my personal feelings kind of cloud my look here because, Syracuse last year was really good, and then the bottom dropped out completely. So I probably won't end up playing that. And then for tonight, I didn't play anything for tonight, but my leans would be the unders in both games. You look at Middle Tennessee, they run a quick passing offense, but it's a short passing offense. Jacksonville State's defense has been really impressive so far this season. Jacksonville State runs a really fast run-based offense. Middle Tennessee's defense has been pretty solid. I'll caution people on this. I thought the Southern Miss Arkansas State game 2 weeks ago was an under, and it went well over the high number like this. But I feel like the one thing that's going to hurt the under here is you're going to get a lot of possessions by both of these teams. You're going to get a lot because both of them are in the top 50 when it comes to seconds per play. And then the FIU New Mexico State game, You're getting the opposite here. Two slower paced teams. You're getting two offenses that aren't great. You're getting two defenses who, FIU's defense, the 3-3-5 that they're using, has put up some decent numbers, but it's not like they've faced a ton of great teams here. So slight leans to the under here, although in both games, but I haven't played anything in either of them.
All right, guys, we got best bet coming up. We do have William asking a question. Can you explain what a round robin bet is? Matt, I'll tell you, I've never bet a round robin, so I don't want to give any wrong information. Have you ever bet it? Do you know what it is?
I have never bet a round robin, but I think the basic premise is you put a bunch of bets in, and then you're trying to win groups of two, and you're trying to win groups of three. I think I don't love the exotic bets, Drew, and I don't know about you. And you said you haven't done it either, but the exotic bets, it's so hard to get one bet right. That's why I'm not really a parlay guy. That's why I'm not really a teaser guy. Although in the NFL, teasing things down to below key numbers, that's different. But I've never bet a round robin in my life.
Okay, well, we'll just keep it at that. And then David saying tonight's game, Jacksonville State, strength of schedule mattering a lot. I agree with you, David. -3 on MTSU. They have played a lot more difficult schedule, including two SEC teams. Jacksonville State really hasn't played anybody of significance. At least I'll break it down more in part number 1 coming up next, but I did want to throw out that. Matt, throw it over to you, man. Any final thoughts here for the show before we shut it down? And what do you got for best bet following up that winner from last week?
I mean, I have the over for Jacksonville State's win total. It was 4.5, and they're at 4. So I'm loving where I'm sitting here. And with games against, their schedule, they still got to play Florida International. They still got to play New Mexico State. They still got to play Louisiana Tech. So just needing one more win from Jacksonville State, that would be nice to get an early cash on that. So look, obviously, as we talk about, for the most part, my best bets would be team totals. They're not out yet, so I'm not going to give that up. I think the over in the Florida State Virginia Tech game is my best bet for this group. I'll say this. I first glance, and obviously I do a lot more of my research Thursday and Friday. So therefore, what I say here sometimes may not necessarily be what I play on Saturday. But on first glance here, I think Florida State does a lot of the heavy lifting on the over here. I like the over in the Florida State Virginia Tech game. I think the Hokies found some things offensively with Kyron Drones under center against Pittsburgh here. But I think Florida State, I think there's a chance this is a 45-17, 45-21 type of game. There's no look ahead for Florida State. There's no anything for Virginia Tech here. I just think we're going to get good weather. Give me the over in Florida State, Virginia Tech.
That number as low as 52 out here, guys. And Matt, prediction for Marlins Phillies rest of the series quickly?
Phillies win tonight. Unless the bad Aaron Nola shows up, then they win on Thursday. So I hope you enjoyed your brief stay in the playoffs, Drew, and maybe you'll make it again next year. It's
been 20 years since, outside of that COVID shortened year where nobody went to games. It's been 20 years since the Marlins have been in the playoffs, Matt. It's been a long drought, my man.
Yes, and as a one-time former Marlins fan, when I was a huge Juan Pierre, Luis Castillo, AJ Burnett fan, there was one too many fire sales for me, Drew. They fire sailed me, I think, in one of those trades, so I decided to go home with the hometown team in Philadelphia.
Hey, it's they've done that. There's a lot of organizations out there that have the tough go of it, like as a fan not winning. The Marlins are up there, though. I'll tell you, they've won 2 World Series, but outside of that, it's been a tough road. So. And we'll see what happens tonight. I would say, I hope you do well, but I'd be lying. I hope your team loses. So, hey, he's Matt Josephs, guys, at Mid-Major Matt, Richmond, Virginia, ESPN Radio there. Thanks, guys, for chiming in live on YouTube, every game on the board, on Twitter as well, and wherever you're downloading your podcasts at, every game on the board. Shout out to our sponsor, Viva TequilaSeltzer.com. Zero sugar. If you don't like a hangover, go check them out, guys. Viva TequilaSeltzer.com. I'll be back with part number 1 shortly, guys. Stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those